Single dad Janitor was asked to play piano as a joke, but what he played made even the CEO tear up. The weight of the black card felt unreal in Natalie Parker's trembling hand, sleek and matte. Its platinum embossing caught the fluorescent light, gleaming as though mocking her with possibilities she had never dared to imagine. It wasn't just a card, it was a key to unlimited choices. She was one of 4 women selected for what Jackson Hayes, the enigmatic CEO of Horizon Innovations, called a social experiment. His words still echoed in her mind. You have 24 hours. Spend as much or as little as you want, no limits, no questions asked. Show me who you really are. Natalie tucked a loose strand of auburn hair behind her ear and glanced at the 3 other women standing beside her in his office, each holding the same identical card. There was Victoria Daniels, the ambitious marketing director who seemed carved out of steel, polished suits, Ivy League degrees, and a reputation for clawing her way to the top. Then Madison Clark, the charming PR specialist who handled social situations with enviable grace, her laughter a tool as powerful as her strategy. And finally, Hannah Danielle Wilson, the brilliant young software engineer whose inventions had already saved the company millions. Compared to them, Natalie often felt invisible. A single mother, an executive assistant, the one who managed Hayes's calendar and coffee orders while struggling to keep her own life afloat. Hayes leaned casually against his mahogany desk, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Chicago skyline behind him. His steel blue eyes moved from one woman to the next, landing finally on Natalie. This isn't about the company, he said. This is personal. Sometimes what we choose reveals more than any interview or performance review ever could. At just 39, Hayes had transformed Horizon Innovations from a tiny startup into a multi-billion-dollar empire in under a decade. He was unconventional, brilliant, and as much a mystery as a legend. Whispers about him filled the halls, stories of near-death experiences, secret philanthropy, and monk-like living despite his fortune. Nobody knew what was true. "Why us?" Madison had asked, breaking the silence. Hayes's lips curved into a smile that never quite touched his eyes. "Because I'm at a crossroads, both professionally and personally. Each of you represents something I need to understand." That had been only 2 hours ago. Now Natalie sat in her modest Honda Civic in the company's parking garage, staring at the card as if it might whisper instructions. The others had already left with bold plans. Victoria announced she was heading for designer boutiques on Michigan Avenue. Madison mentioned a reservation at Alinea, Chicago's famed Michelin-starred restaurant. Danielle had simply smiled mysteriously before gliding toward the Tesla charging station. Natalie's phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Winters, her babysitter. "Joey's fever is up to 101. Should I give him more medicine?" Her heart tightened. Her 6-year-old son had been sick all week. Bills, rising rent, her car's transmission warning light, all of it piled onto her already strained shoulders. And now this card. It wasn't just wealth. It was temptation. She could pay off student loans, secure Joey's future, maybe even buy a home. But was that what Hayes wanted her to do? Or was this all a trap? A test of greed and loyalty? Natalie gripped the steering wheel. She didn't have time to play games. She had a sick child who needed her. 30 minutes later, she walked into Mercy Medical Center, the black card tucked firmly inside her wallet. Joey's pediatrician had been urging a specialist consultation for months, one she could never afford. But today she decided would be different. Natalie hesitated at the pediatric specialty desk, her heart pounding. What if the card didn't work? What if Hayes had set her up to fail, to expose her as someone willing to use company resources for personal gain? Before her doubts could spiral further, a warm voice broke through. "Ms. Parker?" She turned to see Dr. Reynolds, the pediatric pulmonologist whose waiting list stretched for months. He smiled kindly. "We had a cancellation. If you're available, I can see Joey this afternoon." Relief swept through her like a wave. "Yes, absolutely, thank you." 3 hours later, Natalie left the medical center with Joey holding her hand and a folder of test results. For the first time in months, she felt hope. The diagnosis was clear, undiagnosed asthma, and the treatment plan included specialized medication the card had covered in full. For Joey, it meant easier breathing, fewer terrifying nights of wheezing and coughing. "Can we get ice cream, Mom?" Joey asked, his eyes brighter already. "Not today, buddy," she said gently, buckling him into his booster seat. "We have a few more stops first." By dusk, the black card had been swiped 3 more times. At the auto repair shop, her aging Honda finally received the transmission work it desperately needed. At the grocery store, she filled her cart with fresh produce and quality staples instead of the cheapest options. And at a children's store, Joey finally got winter clothes that fit properly. That night, once Joey was asleep, Natalie spread the receipts across her small kitchen table. The total was significant, but hardly lavish compared to what the others were likely spending. She had 1 day left, and an uneasy feeling that this experiment wasn't just about money. Her phone chimed, an email from Jackson Hayes. Subject, tomorrow. Message, dinner, my house. 8 p.m., all 4 of you. Bring whatever you purchased. Natalie leaned back in her chair, unease growing. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. The next morning, Joey bounded into the kitchen, grinning. "Mom, I can breathe through my nose." Her heart melted. The new medication was already working. She made him breakfast while notifications buzzed on her phone. Hayes had created a group chat for the 4 women, and one by one they began posting. Victoria flaunted photos from Neiman Marcus and Tiffany's, a designer handbag, diamond earrings, even an original artwork. Investing in quality. Madison uploaded snapshots of dinner at Alinea, VIP concert access, and the Peninsula Hotel's presidential suite. Life experiences, material things. Danielle was more discreet, sharing only that she'd made strategic acquisitions. Natalie hovered over her phone, wondering if she should share her modest purchases. Would they look pathetic beside luxury and extravagance? Finally, she slipped the phone into her pocket without posting. Instead, she focused on her next move. She had decided to use the card one last time, on something that spoke not just to Joey's needs but to her own sense of purpose. At lunch, she slipped into a small, old bookstore a few blocks from the office. The bell chimed as she entered, greeted by the shop's elderly owner. "I've been holding something for you," Mr. Bennett said, producing a leather-bound book. Financial Wisdom, Building Generational Wealth by Edward Hayes, Jackson's late father. The rare volume had been out of print for years. Natalie's chest tightened. She had one final purchase to make, and this one wasn't for herself. Back at the office, Natalie carefully wrapped the book in brown paper, slipping in a handwritten note. It wasn't a flashy purchase, but it carried meaning. Whatever game Hayes was playing, she wanted him to see who she truly was. Not just a struggling assistant, but a woman with dignity, perspective, and purpose. The day crawled by until 5 o'clock. Natalie dropped Joey at her sister's for the night, then returned home to prepare for the dinner. She chose a simple navy dress, polished but understated. Her grandmother's pearl earrings were her only accessory, chosen more for sentiment than for value. She wanted to appear composed, not desperate. Hayes's address led her to Lincoln Park. She expected a grand penthouse or sprawling mansion, but instead found a warm, historic brownstone with herb boxes in the windows and a porch light glowing softly. Outside, Victoria's Mercedes and Madison's Lexus gleamed. Moments later, Danielle arrived in her Tesla. "Ready for judgment?" Danielle asked with a nervous smile. "As ready as I'll ever be," Natalie answered, clutching her bag. Victoria opened the door before they could knock, champagne flute in hand. "Come in, ladies. The show's about to begin." Her confidence seemed a little too rehearsed. The house surprised Natalie. It wasn't ostentatious, but warm and full of books, paintings, and photographs of landscapes. There were no pictures of family or friends, just fragments of a life lived privately. Madison lounged on a leather sofa, her purchases displayed on the coffee table, menus, concert tickets, hotel key cards. Her collection spoke of stories and experiences, not objects. The final contestants arrive," Hayes greeted them, stepping out of the kitchen with an apron tied at his waist. "Dinner's nearly ready. I hope you like Italian." The next hour felt surreal. Hayes served a homemade meal that rivaled the best restaurants in the city. Conversation flowed, but never touched the experiment. He asked them about art, books, travel, anything but money. His blue eyes, however, never stopped observing. Finally, over tiramisu, he set down his fork. "I suppose it's time to explain why you're all here." "About time," Victoria said tightly, her polished mask cracking. "I've been dying to know the point of this exercise." Hayes leaned back, his expression unreadable. "The point, Miss Daniels, was to see what each of you would do when given freedom. To learn about character. Shall we move to the living room?" They followed him, settling onto couches as he stood by the fireplace, the flames flickering across his face. "Tomorrow," he began, "I'll announce a major reorganization of Horizon Innovations. One of you will play a key role in that future. Tonight is your chance to show me what my card purchased." One by one, they presented their choices. Victoria displayed her luxury items, carefully framed as investments. Madison shared her curated experiences. Danielle revealed something unexpected, educational technology she had purchased and donated in Horizon's name. When Natalie's turn came, her throat tightened. Quietly, she placed her receipts on the table. "I used your card to cover essentials. Medical care for my son, car repairs, groceries, winter clothes." She hesitated, then handed Hayes the wrapped package. "And this, for you." Hayes unwrapped the book with precise movements. When he saw the title, his hand froze. For a moment, raw emotion flickered across his face. "My father's book," he said softly. He opened to the note inside. "The greatest wealth is not measured in dollars. Thank you for the opportunity to invest in what truly matters." The room was silent. Hayes closed the book gently and looked directly at Natalie. Of all the possible purchases Natalie could have made, she had chosen to give something back. Hayes's gaze lingered on her, unreadable, though the intensity made her breath catch. Victoria broke the silence first, her voice sharp. "We've all been patient, Jackson. I think we deserve to know the real purpose of this little test." Hayes set the book down carefully. "Fair enough." He stood by the fireplace, his shadow long against the wall. 6 months ago, I received news that changed how I see everything. Business, legacy, even life itself. I realized the way I'd been measuring success was flawed. That's why I designed this experiment. I needed to see what you valued when the usual constraints were stripped away. Danielle leaned forward. "What kind of news could change your outlook so drastically?" "The kind that forces you to question what you're building and who you're building it for," Hayes answered cryptically. Madison frowned, glass of champagne in hand. "So what? We were lab rats in a psychology experiment?" "Not at all," Hayes replied calmly. "You were given freedom, unlimited freedom. And with it, you revealed what matters to you." He turned to each of them in turn. "Victoria, you sought status symbols and investments. Security and recognition are your currency. Madison, you invested in experiences and connections. You build networks. You thrive on shared stories. Danielle, you used your resources for social impact, creating good while strengthening the company's reputation." Finally, his gaze returned to Natalie. "And you, Ms. Parker, you focused on health, safety, and family before even considering something beyond yourself." Victoria's frustration showed as she tapped her manicured nails against her glass. "I still don't see what this has to do with Horizon's future." Hayes's voice hardened. "Because Horizon is changing direction. Tomorrow I'll announce the creation of a non-profit foundation with an initial endowment of $50 million. Its focus will be healthcare, education, and community development." He paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. "I need someone to lead it who understands value beyond the balance sheet." The revelation landed heavily. Madison's brows rose in surprise. Danielle's thoughtful expression softened. Victoria's face tightened, as if calculating how this shift threatened her ambitions. Natalie sat still, her pulse quickening. Was Hayes implying what she thought? Before she could ask, Hayes gestured toward his study. "Dinner was only the beginning. There's more you should see." The study was lined with bookshelves and glowing screens that displayed Horizon's global operations. Family photographs were scattered across the shelves, images Natalie hadn't noticed earlier. One in particular drew her in, Hayes standing beside a smiling woman with warm brown eyes, her arm around a young boy about Joey's age. The backdrop was a hospital room decorated with balloons. Natalie froze. She knew that face. Madison joined her. "What are you staring at?" "I've seen her before," Natalie murmured. "She used to work in accounting. Catherine Bell." Danielle nodded slowly. "Yes, she was brilliant. Left suddenly about 2 years ago." Hayes's voice came from behind them. "Catherine wasn't just an employee. She was my sister." The air in the room shifted. Hayes stepped closer, his jaw tense. "She died 18 months ago. Acute leukemia. Despite all my resources, I couldn't save her. Her son, Tyler, lives with me now." The pieces fell into place. Hayes's sudden shift in values, his obsession with healthcare, his search for someone trustworthy. Natalie's heart tightened as she realized this wasn't just business for him. It was deeply personal. And for reasons she didn't yet understand, Hayes seemed to believe she might be part of that future. Hayes's revelation left the room hushed. For the first time that evening, the mask of the unshakable CEO slipped, and grief shadowed his face. "It was Catherine who inspired this," he said quietly. "Her illness showed me how broken our systems are. Even with the best doctors and endless money, she still suffered through red tape and gaps in care. The foundation is part of her legacy, but I also need people I can trust, people whose instincts align with the values she lived by." Natalie felt the weight of his gaze again and her throat tightened. Victoria's voice cut through the silence. "With respect, Jackson, making leadership decisions based on sentiment is dangerous. The foundation needs someone with corporate experience, connections, and influence." Hayes's expression chilled instantly. "Or perhaps it needs someone who understands real struggle, someone who sees beyond numbers to the people affected by them." His tone silenced further argument. Before the tension could break, the door to the study burst open. Bradley, Hayes's assistant, hurried in, his suit rumpled and his expression urgent. "Mr. Hayes, there's a situation. Project Phoenix, there's been a security breach." The change in Hayes was immediate. Grief vanished, replaced by sharp focus. "Excuse me," he told the women, his voice crisp. "Please make yourselves comfortable. I'll return shortly." The door clicked shut behind him. Victoria exhaled dramatically. "Well, that was unexpected. Any guesses on what this mysterious Project Phoenix is?" "Probably their quantum computing project," Danielle said. "There have been whispers in the industry. If the rumors are true, it's revolutionary." Madison swirled her drink, thoughtful. "More interesting to me is why Hayes tested us with unlimited money instead of a traditional evaluation." "What does that prove?" Natalie spoke before she could stop herself. "It proves character. Standard tests show competence, but not who someone is when faced with real choices." Her eyes drifted back to the photograph of Catherine and the boy. The resemblance to Hayes was unmistakable. She picked up the frame, her heart thudding. "This boy, Tyler, he must be her son." Danielle joined her, nodding. "Yes. I didn't know he lived with Jackson, though. That explains a lot." Before they could say more, Hayes returned. His eyes immediately landed on the photograph in Natalie's hands. His voice softened. "You recognize her?" Natalie nodded. "Catherine worked here. I remember her." Hayes took the photo gently, his jaw tightening. "Catherine was more than an employee. She was the best of us. She deserved to be leading Horizon, not me. When she died, it changed everything. Her son, Tyler, is my responsibility now. But he needs more than financial security. He needs stability, a family environment. That's something I've struggled to provide." Natalie's pulse quickened at his words. She sensed where this conversation was headed, but wasn't ready to face it. Before she could respond, her phone vibrated violently in her purse. She glanced down, her sister's number flashing repeatedly, followed by a text. "Emergency. Joey. Ambulance. Call now." The room blurred around her. "I have to go," she gasped, grabbing her purse. "My son, he's in an ambulance." Hayes's sharp focus returned. "I'll drive. You're in no condition." He was already reaching for his keys. Natalie barely registered Victoria's protest as Hayes cut her off with finality. "This meeting is over. We'll continue tomorrow." Moments later, Natalie found herself in Hayes's SUV, sirens clearing their path through the Chicago night, every heartbeat echoing with a single thought: "Please let Joey drove with relentless focus, weaving through traffic with the help of a discreet emergency siren. Natalie clutched her phone, trying to steady her hands enough to call her sister. "Jen, what happened?" she demanded when her sister finally picked up. "He was fine, then suddenly couldn't breathe." Jen's voice was strained. "The paramedics think it's a severe allergic reaction. They're rushing him to Mercy Children's." Natalie's heart clenched. "I'll be there in minutes." True to his word, Hayes had them at the hospital in less than 15. Natalie sprinted inside, barely registering the nurses, until she spotted Joey on a bed, small and fragile, an oxygen mask covering his face. "Are you his mother?" a nurse asked, guiding her closer. "Yes," Natalie gasped. "He's stable for now. Severe reaction, but we acted quickly. We'll need to run comprehensive allergy tests." Natalie's world tilted. More tests, more specialists, more bills. The black card had solved so much yesterday, but tonight reality crashed back down on her shoulders. When she handed over her insurance card, the nurse's expression shifted after a quiet conversation with Hayes. "Dr. Harrison, our chief immunologist, will personally oversee Joey's care. All expenses are covered." Natalie turned to Hayes, stunned. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did," he said simply, his expression firm but gentle. Hours later, Joey was resting peacefully, his color returning. Natalie finally stepped into the hallway where Hayes waited, tie loosened, jacket gone. "Thank you," she whispered. "This is what resources are for," he replied, a shadow crossing his face. "I've been here before with Tyler." Natalie blinked. "That's why you created this experiment, isn't it? To find someone who understands what it's like." Hayes nodded slowly. "Partly. Catherine designed the foundation, but she also made me promise to find someone who shared her values, to help raise Tyler. She knew I'd struggle to judge character the normal way. The black card test was her idea in spirit. My execution was unconventional." Before Natalie could respond, her phone buzzed again. This time her sister's voice was panicked. "Nat, someone broke into your apartment. It's ransacked. Your laptop and personal papers are gone. The police think it's identity theft." Hayes was already on his phone, issuing sharp orders. "Security detail to her address now. Full assessment. Coordinate with police." Natalie's knees felt weak. "Why would anyone—" Hayes's expression hardened. "This isn't random. Someone's targeting the women from my experiment. You're the most vulnerable." By morning, Joey was discharged with a detailed treatment plan and a scheduled allergy panel. Hayes insisted she and Joey move into a secure guest house on his property until the threat was resolved. It was stocked with everything Joey needed, even superhero bedding that once belonged to Tyler. Later that day, Hayes convened the women at Horizon headquarters. Tension hung thick in the boardroom as he revealed what his security team had uncovered. The break-ins traced back to Victoria's private investigators. She had orchestrated it all, desperate to secure the most prestigious role in the reorganization. The betrayal stunned the room. Victoria was escorted out, protesting loudly. Then Hayes turned to Natalie. "Despite all this chaos, my decision is unchanged. Catherine's foundation needs someone who understands priorities: health, family, dignity. Ms. Parker, that person is you." Natalie's breath caught. It felt impossible, but also inevitable. She thought of Joey, of families like hers, of the legacy Catherine had left behind. "I'll do it," she said softly but firmly. "I want to build her vision." Hayes's rare, genuine smile appeared. "Then welcome, Director Parker." 6 months later, the Catherine Bell Foundation was thriving, funding healthcare programs, supporting children with chronic illnesses, and launching scholarships. Natalie had moved into a new home nearby, where Joey flourished with proper care and the friendship of Tyler, who had become like a brother. And if Hayes often joined them for dinner, if professional boundaries blurred into something warmer, no one questioned it. Together, they had built not just a foundation, but the beginnings of a family. The black card experiment had ended, but its true value lived on, in healing, in trust, and in second chances.